welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. Dr. Yves is here from Belgium. He has association with Free University of Brussels. I will talk in English. And he also has he's a co-founder of the digital pathology company. And today he will talk about how can we get digital pathology to a global integrated ecosystem.
Yep. Thank you very much. Burak introduced me. I'm very glad to be here. I spent this week in downtown Pittsburgh mostly for the Pathology Informatics meeting. I was here last year too. It's a good meeting. I came back for the second time, so that's always nice. This fellow here is actually Angelos Papas. He's the chief software engineer of Automation, the startup company that I've been mentioning. So with that being said, I'm getting a spinning wheel cursor, which is always good. Oh, there you go. So financial disclosure, like Burak announced already, I'm a co-founder and shareholder in Automation, or like John Bichette said, no conflict, no interest. So I'm interested in digital pathology. I love that quote, by the way. Been using it ever since I heard it last year for the first time. Who am I? I got my bachelor's from the Hogeschool Ghent in Belgium in computer science originally. I spent 1 year working for Becton Dickinson, where I discovered that, hey, this science thing is actually pretty cool, but I know nothing about it. So I joined an exchange program for 1 year, and I ended up at Troy State University in the US. That's in Troy, Alabama, of all places. You know Troy?
Well, I know the school.
Okay, all right. Yeah, you probably played them in football or something and lost because they're Division 1A, and they're pretty good. Yeah, so I went to Troy for a year. I got interested in bioinformatics. I stayed on after the exchange program on an NSF fellowship to get a master's in biology. Then you graduate, you have a bachelor's in computer science, you have a master's in biology. There's really only one thing you can do, and that's get a PhD in bioinformatics. So I was off to Iowa State. I got my PhD in bioinformatics in 2010. Then I joined a CRO in Belgium called Histogenics. There were 30 people back then. They are over 100 people today, and they have a secondary site now in Naperville, near Chicago. So they're growing, and I'd like to think I've contributed to that story a bit. I did bioinformatics. I was the section head of data management and bioinformatics, and now I'm still partly associated with them as a data scientist. Out of Histogenics in 2014, actually became Pathomation. So Pathomation is a spin-off of Histogenics. I'm the chief technology officer and the chief software architect of Pathomation still today. Because nobody else wants to do that, apparently. And from 2014 on, I've also been the digital pathology manager at the university in Brussels. With that being said, show of hands here, how many people are familiar with digital pathology already and whole slide imaging? So I think I can go through the introduction pretty quickly then. I don't know, probably nobody's ever seen this before yet, though. So I was, a few years ago, I actually wrote a book on digital pathology. And I was looking up the history of digital pathology, and I found the traditional story that back in the 60s, Ron Weinstein did the first telepathology experiment at Logan Airport, et cetera, et cetera. But then one day I also stumbled up on these, and I think this is amazing. This dates back to 1896, and even as far as back then, people were thinking and coming up with devices to capture the content of what was visible under a microscope, and even what we now call a robotic stage to move the slide in small increments and be able to capture every field of view at high resolution. So you can combine these, and you have a manual slide scanner almost, which I thought was really amazing. So we've been thinking about digital pathology for a long time, or whole slide imaging at least. Today, it looks more modern, of course, luckily. This is digital pathology on a budget. You take your smartphone, some of these can even be downloaded and printed on a 3D printer. You attach it to your smartphone, you attach it to the ocular piece of the microscope, and you have your digital microscope. And this was actually done by Yukako Yagi just a few years ago. Actually used to be faculty here as well. So for the real research microscopes, you can add the camera port. You put a camera on there. Again, you have digital capture. You can go a step further. You can add more annotation. This is an Olympus setup, I believe. So here's your practice slides. Here's the robot that selects the slides one by one, puts them under the table. And then there's the camera again that captures all the motion. And you can actually program these devices to just work all night long. And it's quite intriguing to see them. It looks so archaic now, but they still work. You still find them in a lot of places. The really nice thing about this is that most labs anywhere in the world already have this component in one shape or another. And so you don't have to, like from a vendor's point of view, from Olympus' point of view, they don't have to go into the lab and say, throw away all the microscopes. No, they can actually say like, hey, you have a microscope, you want to try our automation unit and put it next to it and gradually roll into digital pathology that way, which I think is a very neat way of actually getting used to it and getting some experience with it. But of course, whole slide imaging, that's what we typically do today. So this is a single slide scanner from 3D Histech. This is a bigger one from Hamamatsu. This is open. They were installing one in Brussels, and they were opening it up, and you typically don't get to see it that way. And I thought it was really cool. So these are all the red parts, all the hydraulics to keep the table stable. Then this is all the optics to move the slide around from the loader. But then this is probably the most important part in set C, because here you see that at the end of the day, it's still just a microscope. Like all of this design, I mean, they make it like Apple, like very stylish and simple to use, but at the end of the day, it's still just a microscope. There's robotics. It takes a slide, it moves it step by step under the lens, and it takes pictures and sends it back to the computer. And so this is your workflow. You have your slide, you put it in a machine, you get out a big image. This is another more hands-on way of looking at it. You have your slide tray, you put it in the scanner, and you look at the slides in a viewer. Now, the images are big. How big? This kind of puts it in perspective. A lot bigger than your digital camera, of course. So if this picture of me and my daughter gentleman was put in the same perspective on the same scale as this one, you would have like a tiny compact image. So what they do in practice, and this is where the informatics part comes up and picks up, and the digital part. So the pixels are packaged as what's called a pyramidal stack, and you go from different zoom levels. So at the highest zoom level, at the deepest zoom level, you may end up with a picture that's 200,000 by 80,000 pixels, which is big, and you're never going to show in one time. But then to start off, to just show the thumbnail of the image before you click on it and before you zoom in on it, you also have an image at zoom level 0, and that's a way more manageable, 782 by 312 pixels, or something in that range at least. And actually, you may already know that one of the problems in digital pathology today is that everybody has different file formats, and I believe that that was not necessarily ill will of the manufacturers actually, but back when they came up with the scanners, when they made the first scanners, there was no really good technical solution in the IT space to package this kind of data. So every vendor just went off and came up with their own solution. Because of course, you know, Siemens wasn't going to call GE and say, hey, we're working on a slide scanner in secret. Do you want to get together to devices common file format? Yeah. That's not how it works. So how does it work at the deepest zoom level? Well, the different zoom levels are compartmentalized even further. They're stored as grids with tiles in them. And this is how it works. Like at a particular zoom level, maybe you might have a grid with 64 by 64 tiles. And then each tile can be, in the case of Apereo, and Avlos, correct me if I'm wrong, in the case of Apereo, it's 340 by 340 pixels.
Well, for eyes, I mean,
yeah.
I think it's the ratio of the standard level.
Yeah. Like Kamamatsu actually has really big tiles at some point. Again, every vendor just came up with their own solutions for that. And yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, the pros and cons and everything. And you can actually query these images and say, okay, how many tiles are there? And then you can see at the lowest zoom level, you just have one tile. And then at the highest zoom level 9, you actually have 168 by 412 tiles. That's a lot of tiles. But for parallelization, that's great because parallel computing, you can actually spawn as many threads as you have CPUs or cores in your system, and you just keep feeding tiles into it. So for parallelization, the whole tile concept works really great, I think. And then what does a tile server do? Well, if you have your viewer, the viewer sends a request to the server, to the software on the backend, and asks, hey, I want to portray this field of view at this resolution. And then the tile server just is smart enough to say, okay, let me just send you this tile. And that means that at no given point in time do you have to sit there and wait to download a 500 megabyte image file, for instance. So with that being said, how far are we into digital pathology today? Well, at USCAP earlier this year, there were about 4,000 attendees. This week in Pittsburgh, we were told there were 210 attendees. So that's a 1-to-20 ratio. I like to think of it at that as the glass is half full, and that means that there's still a lot of room to growth and a lot of opportunities for people like you that are hopefully interested in this new field. Now, the title of my talk was about ecosystems. So the next part is how you can actually get there. I think you need to, I think when you start with digital pathology, it's important to establish a ground truth for imaging data. Yes, you can go to a specific vendor and the vendor will ship with certain software because he has to, otherwise he has no way for you to look at the data. But that just leads to a lot of confusion as soon as you have 2 microscopes. So what did we do in Brussels? Well, at one point we got a scanner. Woo! That was really exciting. We were waiting for that forever. This one was shipped to us from the US, by the way, which was interesting because it was done very shortly. We got the scanner very shortly after Apereo was bought by Leica. So it's an Apereo scanner, but you can see it already has the Leica logo on it, but it still has Apereo on the other side. And I imagine that the newest ones just get rid of the Apereo logo, but they're still Apereo scanners. And then they had just stopped manufacturing in the UK. So they shifted all their production to the US, which means you have to wait forever to get one. But then the problem started because now we have the Apereo scanner, and we actually already had the other platforms. We already had a new pathway. We had Bosch immunofluorescence. We had Nikon immunofluorescence. In other institutes, maybe they have one of those Olympus automated microscopes already. So you can put all that on the network, and then you can store it on a central hard disk, and that's easy enough. But then you're still faced with this problem that, oh, wait, if I did an experiment and I did an H&E initially, and then I ran some fluorescence probe, and wait, let me see. I started off with platelets, so I need the DB activated to look at these slides, and then I need to download image scope to look at these slides, and then is it Nikon or Zen Studio that I need to look at my fluorescence? it's really confusing. And as you're offering more options as an imaging core facility, you're actually experiencing less customer satisfaction because it becomes more confusing for your customers, which is very ironic and very frustrating. So the solution in our case, you want to have all these file formats and you want to have them in a single viewer, and that's what Pathomation did. So Pathomation helps establish that ground truth. It levels the playing field. You did some microscopic image observation. Your image is an image. It has pixels. You should not have to worry about where those pixels are coming from. A Hamamatsu pixel is just as valuable as a Nikon pixel. And then eventually we had the scanner, and then that's the software next to it, so Universal Viewer. And we went from here to here. And now your customers are happy again, because now what you can do is, hey, somebody gives you slides. How do I get these? And we'll just send you a link, and you can open it with your web browser. Okay. A concrete application. So we have the ground truth. We can do images from wherever they come from. And then one of our first projects was the digitalization of a biobank. I've seen pictures like this at the conference, actually. This is a popular thing to show. So this is typically what you have everywhere in the world, in every pathology lab, in every basement, in every research institute, in every university. You have a lot of glass slides. Finding something in there, if you're lucky, some of the older secretaries are still around that actually wrote everything down meticulously on index cards and stuff, but in practice, it's not all that efficient to find something in that. Plus, there are some serious issues with biobanks, the way we know them today. So in 2009, they did a survey of biobanks. They looked at over 1,000 samples. They found that 95% actually contained what they said they would contain, which is tumor. 23% had a volume that was just, only 23% had a significant tumor volume. 17% of the samples that were said to have tumor were actually negative for tumor. And 1% was completely necrotic, so totally useless anyway. And actually, this was not for a private biobank. I don't remember which biobank they used anymore, but this was not for a private biobank. But I can confirm these numbers. I mean, Histogenics is a CRO. They get samples from big pharma, even big pharma under GCLP conditions. 5% of the samples you get doesn't contain any tumor, which is really bizarre, really hard to explain. There's human error, of course. The problem is that the supply chain is so large, and this tissue has to go through so many steps. But yeah, so then consulting a biobank is hard because once a biobank gives out a sample, the sample is gone, right? I mean, it's by definition a very destructive process. But if there's only about a 50% chance that when you make it through the hurdles, after all is being said and done, you're actually going to get what you want. You use that biobank. I mean, so our solution was that, okay, we're going to build a website around it for a select number of samples. We section them, we stain them, we scan them. And now we have a virtual catalog of our biobank. We have a virtual visual catalog of our biobank. So this is pretty much the level where most biobanks are at today. So what we added is this column, the slides column. And then you click on it, and again, this would be your conventional off-the-mill biobank that you have today. This is what we added. So this is in the case of pancreatic. This was pancreatic tissue mostly. So the background of the recipe was in diabetes. So this is pancreatic tissue. Before you order this piece of tissue, you can actually just look at the H&E slides or the fluorescence and see if there are sufficient islets of Langerhans in it if there are alpha cells in there, if there's tumor, if there's lymphocytic infiltration, etc., etc., whatever properties you're looking for. And then, yeah, this is this. Yeah, the color is not that good. The contrast is not that good, but this is actually an eye of Langerhans that you're looking at in the middle. And this is a lot more interactive. So the value proposition without digital pathology is somewhat like this. I'm looking for breast tumor tissue. Sure, glad to help. Does a sample contain cancer cells? Just trust us. Is it in situ or invasive? Just trust us. Is it hormone responsive? Just trust us already, or we don't have that information if they're really honest. Now with digital pathology, it becomes a completely different story. I'm looking for breast tumor tissue. Okay, glad to help. Does a sample contain cancer cells? Well, have a look at the H&E, see if it suits the parameters of your clinical study. Is it in situ or invasive? Again, have a look at the H&E and the immunostains which we provide. Is it hormone responsive? Again, have a look at the immunostains. So on the right-hand side, this is what you prefer. If only because today you don't know what the questions are going to be that are being asked tomorrow. This is a way to prepare for those questions. So then, this is what I call an ecosystem. So you have all of your imaging modalities, you have conventional, you have scanners. This was another one that they had on the hospital side by then. But because we had established this ground truth that we could have all the slides, this is just plug and play. Just add it, and point it, and have the software point to it. It's just more slides in your repository. So there's no issue with the fact that this is a different content than this file, this one. And then there's a number of applications that we built around that pretty rapidly with very limited staff and in the course of just a few months. I mean, each one of these was built in the course of a few months. We did education. We built a study website for the undergraduate students. In Belgium, you go to medical school, you actually start at your undergrad. So you start medical school when you're 19, you come out a doctor when you're 24. And yeah, we also built an app for the students, and that was really cool. Like I was supervising for one of the exams, and you know, you make something and you want your software to be used by others. And I was supervising for one of the exams, and I came downstairs, and all the screens are nervous and lined up and everything. And like a handful of them were actually using the app, like looking at their slides at the last minute. I mean, that's job satisfaction right there. Yeah, for the research, yeah, that's the biobank mostly we did. We also did some visualization of historical slides. You can go back to historical archives from the 60s. Scan them. Sometimes you need to put new copies or something, but you can scan them and publish these. And there's tons of historical important information available in these slides. And this is a way to unlock them and show them to the world. And then, yeah, so this was research, and then the biobanking application was the one that just went through. And actually, each one of these screenshots can be a separate talk in its own right. But together, this is what I refer to as an ecosystem. And you're able to build it once you are once you've established the ground truth. Why do I call it an, yeah, so summing up what I just said, why do I call it an ecosystem? There's a constant interplay between different participants. And I see this at Path Informatics, right? There are companies there and say, oh, we cater to researchers, we cater to the clinicians, we cater to students, but it's never that clear cut. I mean, a researcher teaches, a graduate student mentors undergraduate students, for instance. An undergraduate student learns different from a graduate student. In our case, at the university, we have this very laid out application for undergraduate histology and undergraduate pathology, but for the residents on the hospital side, we actually have something that's more case-based, where they can freely browse, where they see a panel they see a panel of different stains and different slides from a mastectomy or a colon tumor, and they're free to explore, navigate, form their own diagnosis, submit it to a system which is evaluated by the pathologist, and et cetera, et cetera. So people learn at different rates, at different scales, at different points in their career. And a physician can enroll patients for clinical trials, which puts GCLP into view, for instance. So people roles vary, and anybody today and anybody at a university in the morning can be teaching, in the afternoon can be doing research, can be called away for a clinical workflow because maybe he's an expert in nephropathology and there's not that much nephropathology. There's not a lot of institutes that can actually have a full-time nephrologic pathologist on call. And then they can be doing clinical research. Maybe they're oncologists. Maybe they don't have a lot to do with pathology, but they're in clinical research. They're involved in clinical trials, and every now and then they want to be able to look at the H&E data. So people can wear different hats, and that's why it's important to offer them, not have to say that, oh, you have to use this software when you're wearing this hat and that software when you're using that hat, because they're all in vertical information silos. From an information point of view, we're really talking about adding new information there. So typically you have your sample and maybe you have your clinical data in your LIS or electronic patient record software, EPR. Now you can add whole slide images as additional information. But really, that's only just the tip of the iceberg. Beyond that, you can look at quantification of morphology. And even further beyond that, you get into more bioinformatics related applications. Next generation sequencing data, data generated during experiments, OCT, which is what Jeffrey Fine is doing here, mass spec data, et cetera, et cetera. And if you have all that figured out, at the end of the day, you can build systems. You can now build systems that offer intelligent querying. And this is an example of that. I'm looking for so this goes back to our biobank, right? So I'm looking for pancreatic tissue from a patient with recent onset diabetes. Up to here, you're going to be able to find all that in the clinical data. But then it's got to have a susceptible, whatever HLA-B2 genotype is. And at least a certain percent of these islets still have to contain insulin producing cells. So something that you can only find at these downstream layers. And there you go. I'm gonna switch a little bit about who here has experience with image analysis. Well, so is that something that you're going to be picking up during your research, or okay? So image analysis 101. How does it actually work? Because it's something I've been wondering about myself for a long time, and now I kind of figured it out, and I thought it was worthwhile putting it in here. Because it's very easy to look at, all the big papers that are using TensorFlow and PyTorch and 37 layers of convolutional networks and et cetera, et cetera. Let's back up a little bit. Let's say, you have a slide, one of the famous CMU slides, hosted by the OpenSlide project. And you just want to distinguish whether there's tissue in the tile, yes or no. Everybody can do that, right? But can we make the computer do it? That's the question. Well, here's something you can do. You can construct a histogram. You can convert the image to grayscale and then construct a histogram of the color values that you have, the color intensities. And then you clearly see the distinction, obviously. So can we make the computer see the distinction between this and that? Maybe you have some idea. But between this and this, obviously you can make a computer see that distinction. So didn't you tell me that it took you 4 lines in MATLAB? Well, there you go. This is Python. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, my friend. So it doesn't have to be complicated. All I need is NumPy And then I'm using our own software. I'm using this time TMA Python. That's the fact set we wrote ourselves. That's the one that we use to establish that ground truth. That's the one that we use to just get pixel data. And I'm pointing to a slide, TMU1 with FPS. I'm getting the maximum zoom level because I want to make sure I'm at the right depth. So I'm determining the zoom level, and then I'm getting TMA will get tile, get me a single tile at position 0, 0, just because I've seen that thumbnail and I kind of have a good idea that the one that's all the way in the top left corner, that's going to be blank tile, of course. And then bring this tissue my tile. And tile XY, that will be one that I did have to try this a couple of times. Incidentally, the CMU1 slide, if you remember originally in my first attempt, I thought I could just take the middle pixel. But incidentally, the one in the middle has no, there's actually 2 specimens on here. So the one in the middle was blank too, so I kind of had to fidget with that a little bit to land somewhere where there was tissue. So I'm getting the pixel I'm getting a tile at another location. Again, I'm invoking this tissue tile at y equal to this function. What happens here? I'm converting my 500 by 1000 pixels to a linear array. Then I'm computing the mean of the pixels, the standard deviation of the pixels, and then this threshold. This can vary a little bit. I mean, this algorithm is perfect. It's not foolproof, but it illustrates the principle of it, at least. And then if my mean threshold is true and my standard deviation threshold is true, then I'm deciding that it's issue. And this is what that looks like in practice if you let that run over all of your slides together. And this was done with Matplotlib and Python. And 6 months ago, I didn't know anything about Python. So you can pick this up pretty quickly. Python is a really cool language for this, I thought. I'm a big fan of Python. This is a more advanced sample. This comes from Michael Montalto, I think, from a few years back at the DPA. So, and I put it in here because the biobank is about pancreas tissue, so it was apt to use this example as well. So pancreas analysis for diabetes research, you have your slide on the left side, of course. The first step you would take is to find the tissue. And then the second step would be to locate the islets of Langerhans within those already delineated regions. And then the third step finally is to quantitate the insulin. And you can think of your own algorithms of what you would like to detect through image segmentation. And next week, Burak is going to tell you all about that. He's going to give you the secrets, right? So I'm giving the introduction for your next lecture. Okay. There are many tools to do this. I just did it with Python. I just did it with scripting. I learned how to program when I was 12 years old. So I like programming. I like having control. I didn't have much of a social life. But you know, that's the nice thing about the program. I mean, about writing the code yourself, you really have to understand and you really learn what you're doing, how it works. And it pays off later in life, I like to think. But there are commercial environments where you can do a lot of stuff and you can just use pre-built libraries and you can click and set some parameters and almost do it like trial and error, right? Like, oh, let's try this algorithm. Does it work? No. Oh, let's try another one. You know, Azure ML from Microsoft actually has a very visual environment where you have your input, and it works almost like a flowchart. Like you just keep adding more algorithms or something on top that you like. But these are free of charge, open. Things like gradient descent, you should at least have written once in your life. Things like histograms in your life, you should at least have done that once because it'll give you a better understanding of later on if you're switching to resize or even Photoshop. It'll give you a better understanding of what it is you're actually doing and why you're doing it. It won't be as much as a black box. Now, what can we do for you today? So if you don't like vendors talks, just cover your ears for the next 5 minutes or so. So what can we do for you? We're the new kid in the neighborhood. It's an interesting experience. Not good things, not the good things. We can read more file formats than anybody else, and he's the guy responsible for that. Thank you, Angelos. So we can read more file formats than anybody else. That's a plus. A lot of environments only focus on the whole slide imaging. We think it all belongs together. We think there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to treat snapshots from your fluorescent microscope the same way than your whole slide imaging. You should be able to display them side by side and treat them side by side and test them side by side. We have a free software offering called PMA Start. You can get it from free.pathonation.com. It's Windows only. Sorry for the Mac users out there. Windows only for now. It turns out it's a huge effort actually to port this to something that's going to be platform independent. We are thinking about it. But if you can get over that, then it turns your Windows Explorer from something that's very confusing and looks like this into something that's really nice and organized and looks like that. So we like to think of it as the Rosetta Stone of digital microscopy. You have your own local abstraction layer. So where do you take it from there? Well, viewing is only the first step. Of course, you can view slides, you can pan, you can rotate, you can do all sorts of things. But this is our PMA Python package. The PMA Python package is actually open source. You can go to Pipi, you can install it that way. We have an ImageJ plugin. Again, the ImageJ plugin is open source. You can download it, you can extend it, you can add parameters to it if you want it. You can make it exactly suit your needs. We actually have a tutorial on our website from another group that did exactly that. They modified our plugin, and now they were kind enough to write up how they did it. Because that's an eternal problem that you run into as well. Like you build something, you can talk about it, but then you have to document it, and you have to put yourself in the mindset of the other people that want to use it, and that even if you have time for that, that's very hard to do. So we're really trying very hard to build a user community of that. And I'm very much inspired by Jason Svedlow. He a few years ago, Angelos and I went to the 10th annual Open Microscopy meeting, and he told us that there were 90 people there from all over the world. And Jason and I, we were catching up, and he told me 10 years ago, 3 people showed up. So things can move, things can evolve. So that's what we're aiming for too. Like in 10 years, I'm hoping to stand here and people are lining up through the doors, trying to get in, and there's fights. Campus police has to come. Maybe not that bad, but still, that's really what we're hoping for. I mean, we're in it for the science too. We want to advance. We really want to advance the field. This whole initiative was started by pathologists for pathologists, and we hope we can help. We can spread that vision and propose it as something that's real and not. There's a couple of other things we're working on. We're working on a PHP interface. Why PHP? You might ask. Anybody here doing image analysis at PHP? Yeah, okay. I didn't think so. But PHP, there are a lot of slides. There's a lot of material that you just want to show and share with people, right? And then PHP is still the quickest way to get something up and running and get it on the web and connect to a database or go through a folder in the file system and ask what slides are there and just display them. And that's why we think a PHP interface is valuable, just to build custom digital pathology portals for people. We're working on a Java portal to integrate with LIS systems, actually mostly. So that's a little more advanced upstream. We have Octave sample code. Anybody here taken Andrew Yves' course on machine learning, maybe on Coursera? Okay, well, Octave is like a free equivalent for MATLAB, and you can do some pretty neat things with it. So we show on our website how you can integrate with Octave. In terms of file format, we can export to HDF5 and to TIFF, and we have sample code for that on the website that, again, you can just download and play with and tweak for your own needs. And then, you know, go out, build applications, and that's what these are all examples of. So this gives you a visual representation of the kind of stuff that you can build with our components. I mean, our components are like a Lego box with bricks for digital pathology applications. It scales. This is a setup that we did across the Atlantic for a client in the US. And then even beyond that, we've set up systems that go across the 3 major zones like Asia, Europe, and Americas. And a lot of that is possible thanks to modern cloud technology. Like a lot of it is we leverage the technology from Amazon there or Azure, and again, our building blocks are ready to do that. Now, you won't be able to do that with PMA Start, but it's a possibility. And it's pretty neat that the source code at the end is common to all these, and it's just different ways in which we compile them, and it just works every time again. I mean, I'm amazed. I was amazed myself when we had this up and running across 3 continents, and it's really cool. So if we are the Rosetta Stone today of digital pathology, my goal is actually to become these guys tomorrow. So a little more advanced, a little fancier, more stuff you can do with it, but still at the level that, you know, we're not going to build the house. We're not going to build the house, or we're not going to build the car, or the boat, or the bridge. Well, actually, we would be building the bridge. We're hoping to have to offer you all the right tools that you need to build that house or that boat. So in conclusion, I'm actually on time. Wow. Digital pathology is definitely ready for prime time education, training, research. You can get PMA Start for free today and get started with it. No more hassle building your own viewer on top of OpenSlide, which a surprising number of people are still trying to do and doing. And I saw a couple of talks like that actually this past week. Get your pixels where you want them to be. Get them when you want them, and send them to wherever you need. And if you have an environment you would like us to support, contact us. We'll be happy to do it, because that's what it's all about. That's our mission. Gentle roadmap into digital pathology. Don't try to do it all at once. Start with one use case, expand with others. That ecosystem overview slide from the university that I had was really impressive once I had finished it, but we had done all that over the course of 4 years. So there was never an initial meeting where we said, oh, let's do all that and see where we end up. No, we started with a very small piece. We actually started just with the website for the students. Like, hey, you know, we have 150 students, 150 students come through here every week. And, you know, they're fighting to get the best slides, etc., etc. And they go home, they don't have their microscope anymore. Is there any way we can help out them? And that's a really quick way to get started. And that's probably not going to be the case here, because you have some of the world leading thinkers in and key opinion leaders in digital pathology here in Pittsburgh. But if you go on in your careers and you end up in locations where they don't have digital pathology yet, that's a really good way to get started and pick it up. It's also very visual, and it helps you take it to administration. Oh, why do you want to have a slide scanner? Why should I give you $500,000 to buy a slide scanner and have a technician to operate it? Well, because my friend in Pittsburgh scanned these slides for me, and look, this is what we can do. And you can organize a questionnaire amongst the students, and the students will tell you they love it. And yeah, that's all good. You can create your own marketing that way to push the product forward. And then once you are at that level, well, spread the word and share experiences, right? Come to these API meetings. Digital pathology, Pathology Visions is coming up in November this year in San Diego. Nice weather in November in San Diego. So, or this is the book that we wrote. It's still a good introduction. It's got it's a few years old, but it's like 90 pages. It's a much easier read than some of the reference works. If all you want to do is get a quick survey on the field. We've had about 5,000 chapter downloads by now, which we're pretty proud of, actually. And then if you don't want to go to San Diego, well, maybe you want to come to Greece. So on September 9 in Athens, Greece, I'm organizing a small one-day workshop on computational pathology. We got some big names invited, I think. I'm very happy I was able to convince these people to come. Thomas Fuchs, who turns out to be a former rocket scientist, literally, worked for NASA. Shakra, here from this school, of course. And then Derek McGee has been doing a lot of groundbreaking stuff in Leeds in the UK for a long time. So let's make digital pathology great again. If it ever was not great, I don't know. And this one still has UPMC on it because Chakra is associated with UPMC, so that's where I got the slide from. But eventually, yeah, the acknowledgement. I mean, this is all you. You're the guys that are going to make this happen at the end of the day. All we can do is try to provide you with the best tools. I mean, from my point of view, anyway, where I'm standing, is all I want to do is provide you with the best tools and you guys to come up with the really cool science applications and the FDA approval. Yeah, those are fun to get. So I'll continue the conversation. That's my email address. Burak obviously has my coordinates as well. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
I'm curious about your research for image. And there is a limit in the number of colors you can take. So if there's a move to black,
We haven't done that yet. The closest thing we're looking at right now is probably the rare side scanner from Seattle. The rare side scanner is for CTCs, circulating tumor cells. We're looking into that right now.
Yeah, but aren't you referring to multiplexing the fluorescent images? There are software can do that. I mean, if you have an unlimited number of channels, it's just the end result is an RGB image that multiplex all the channels, and we can switch them more and more.
But multiplexing is still somewhat different from traditional immunohistochemistry, right?
I mean,
because there's only one path of the scanner. Okay, yeah.
But you cannot do probably without software that you cannot access the raw data. I mean, it's for example,
it is, but you can just go back to the original.
I mean, in order to see, it's okay, but if you want to, sometimes this is stored as 16-bit values. If you want to access that kind of data, it's not possible yet. But the renderer itself does read it and convert it
Yeah, but just for looking at the law.
No, no. Because you can then
You can do it, yeah. Other questions?
What about like newer platforms?
We add them on an on-demand basis. Like if
I understand they're
well, at the end of the day, you're gonna have imaging data, and we just the only thing. Look, yes, imaging modalities can differ, and like last year, I had a discussion with somebody who was looking for a universal viewer, and he wanted a universal viewer where he could do anything from whole slide imaging through the DICOM CT stacks to PDB files for protein structure. And yeah, I don't think something like that. I mean, you can. There's something like BISC, of course, which supports 250 file format apparently. But I think when you get to something that's generic, it's going to become really hard at being good at something specific. And there is some specifics to imaging data. If you have a file format that you can't read, by all means send it to us, and we'll be happy to add it to our repository. You're welcome.